um, library, and today Susan Coleman is with us, and John Hopkins and Eva. So we need to approve the minutes of the November 18th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of November 18th.
Okay. Do we have a second? Eva is a second. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So, and moving right along to Megan for the report of the librarian.
Okay, so this, since we just talked, it seemed like about 2 weeks ago. It's fairly short. We continue to get happy reactions from patrons for being fine-free. We're still getting back some books that had been out for a long time. So that's been going very well, I think. The main thing we'll talk about in news business later on. The collection updates. We've finished weeding the paperback collection. And so now we're going to be putting some of the paperbacks that are part of series in the right main collection, so they're a little easier to find. And then new stuff is coming in. Still, Joy is a little bit behind because we're ordering that much stuff. So that's a good thing. That all this new stuff is coming in. Some is going to the new shelves. Some is just going directly to the shelves, the nonfiction shelves, depending on where there's some room and some interest. Because not everybody wants like the test taking books. They don't need to be on the new shelf, stuff like that. Hopefully early next week, we're going to be adding games and puzzles for checkout. They've arrived and have done the basic processing. Joey just needs to make a record for them. We're targeting stuff for all age ranges. I have some puzzles for toddlers up to puzzles that are like very intricate, like 1,000 or more pieces for adults. So we're just trying to hit everybody. And the games the same way. We have like Crocodile Dentist, and then we have some like heavier stuff for that's mostly for adults. So I think that's going good. We started weeding the kids nonfiction, also for checkouts and condition. And we're ordering new books as we need to for that. Same process as the other collections. Just a lot of stuff, it's good. We're just updating to a newer edition. Especially like one of the atlases for the world came in today. And it was nice seeing that there's all these countries that the previous one didn't have. So stuff we need to have. Moving on to building issues. We had a patron that had some issues with how long the handicap door stays open. And we're working on getting that adjusted so it stays open a little bit longer. It's set right now, I think, to the minimum amount of time that they're supposed to be open. And he's just a little bit slower with his wheelchair, so we just need to have it adjusted a little bit. It replaced half of the light bulbs in our entryway because they were burned out. So it's much brighter in there and much nicer, especially when it's getting dark at 4. So that's going good. We had a leak on the outside faucet. It had always been dripping since, I was told, since like last winter. It had a little drip. It became a much larger drip, but that's been turned off and fixed. So we had patrons coming in at least once a day telling us that it was leaking, and we're like, we know, we're working on it. So that's the main building issues. Passive programming. Diane and Sarah put together a quick gratitude tree kit for Thanksgiving week. We actually even handed some out the week after Thanksgiving because a little girl saw them and we had a few left and she was just super excited about it. We started handing out some other take and make kits on the 3rd. We're doing 2 different folded book art kits and then make little yarn hats for the Christmas tree ornaments. We've handed out about 15 each of the folded book kits and about We just gave out like 5 right before I came over. So we're at about 30 of the yarn hats. So I think that's going pretty good. We offered some Hanukkah activity packs. We had 10 available. We gave away 5 of them. And one of the mothers that came in was super excited that we had something slightly different. And so I think that was going good. I'll have something for Kwanzaa as well right after Christmas. Just some activity, word finds, and coloring pages and stuff. Statistics are there. Nothing has changed too much. If you have any questions about that, our checkout is down a little bit, mostly because we were closed for so much of November. But Diane did still run the curbside, so we did have some checkouts that one full week we were closed, but still down a little bit. General events going on, nothing too much. Most of that's just covered. So I think that's all I have right now. Then I'll have policy manual talk and new business later in the agenda. Are there any questions about anything I've been talking about?
Just a question. That I was by the library today. The books that you took out that Joy was taking, I'm assuming, are those going to the Friends of the Library?
Yeah, that was a donation that we got. We added some of the books, and the rest of them are going to the Friends of the Library. Okay, and then is that what the city was doing there, was fixing the leak? What they were doing there today, it's like you were right. We were really busy as when you showed up today.
I parked in the back and walked.
They are fixing some of our shelves for us. In the children's area where the comic books are and the early readers, the shelves, there's no spacing between, the shelves are back to back and there's no spacing. So they put a board between so the books will actually stay on their shelf. Good. Which I've heard was something that staff have wanted for a couple years, because that was an area where kids, purposely or not, sometimes would just accidentally push the books all the way through from one side to the other. So now that won't happen. Oh, good. Okay, that's all I had.
I'm glad to hear that you're doing some diversity with handouts over the holidays.
Yeah,
I'd like to see that continue.
Yeah, I'm seeing what I can find out there that's good, a good quality. And then just handing some stuff out, because people like handouts and coloring pages and word finds, no matter what it actually is.
Okay. So you touched on the statistics already. Is that correct?
Yeah, I can go over any of them if you'd like in detail.
I do have a fiscal report for you. You received it when you arrived this evening. A couple of things to note in this month's report. You just saw one a couple of weeks ago, really, but property taxes first off I'll hit, because that's kind of the biggest revenue generator for the library. We're nearly 11% higher through the end of November than the same period last year. That was to be expected. We did anticipate a 3% assessed value increase, as we've discussed before, as well as a reduction in compression. It's too soon to tell exactly whether we're anticipating more property taxes than we had expected. I did report previously that we were expecting $10,000 above what's currently budgeted, that $508,979. But at this time, I say I don't think we're expecting much more than that 10,000. So still certainly good. We projected in the right direction, and certainly anything above that is always good news. As far as other revenues are concerned, there's not much in here. Library fees, a total of $5,000 for the year. You're sitting at about 41%. It's higher than last year. Last year we had $1,600 versus the $2,000 you've seen so far. But with the reduction in fines and the fine-free, what's the word I'm looking for? Attempt. Trial. Thank you. I expect that will kind of drop off over the next several months. All in all, your revenues are good. You're sitting in a good place, and we certainly don't expect any issues for this fiscal year. On the personal services side, so our staffing, we are about 42% of the way through the year. If you using the end of November as your guide. So the fact that our staffing salary amounts is sitting at about 33% is a little low. We are seeing some changes in the group insurance line. That's where we're seeing a lot of our savings. Insurance plans changes, people change as far as like what options they want to select. So we budgeted what we knew, and it looks like some plan revisions happened. So seeing some savings there and just across the rest of the personnel lines as well. On the materials and service section, there's a lot of stuff in there certainly, but all in all, you're sitting at about 20% for the year. So Megan certainly has some flexibility to spend some money through the remainder of the fiscal year, and if she's updating stock and replacing things, and certainly I think she'll start eating that up. One thing I do want to note on here is that the first quarter's worth of charges for service are included in this report. So they go through the end of September, which would, in a perfect world, be about 25%. So you see the admin charges for service is sitting at 15%. Certainly great news. But to us, that says we're hoping that then we won't have to bill as much, at least as not as much as we planned for. On the finance side, you're seeing 30%, and a lot of that is due to the fact that finance sees some of their charges right at the beginning of the fiscal year, specifically our Springbrook charges, the audit charges, and stuff that hits right at the beginning. So we're always going to see some front load from finance. I don't anticipate seeing that number change beyond what's budgeted, the $28,419. Nothing crazy is going on in finance right now, so we shouldn't see anything higher. All in all, the library is sitting in a good spot as far as the budget is concerned. This will be food for thought as we start to move towards a budget development cycle. That'll kick off here in the next few weeks with capital planning, and then in January we'll really hit the ground on operational needs. So I imagine Megan will be back in January with what would the library board like to see out of next year's budget. At this time, housing values are holding steady and still climbing. The cutoff for property tax valuations is January, so I don't see any change in the horizon before January, the January 1 cutoff. So we expect another solid year of property taxes, likely a reduction in compression again for the 2023 fiscal year. So we're certainly excited about that. However, the market's due for a correction. I don't think we're going to see a significant drop, but we will see some flatlining, maybe a small decline, at least slow. Certainly not what we've seen in the past where it just drops through the floor. So the outlying fiscal years are ones to watch. I don't predict any financial hardships for us in the next 5 years, but we are going to monitor that closely as we go. So food for thought as we go into the next budget cycles. I think next year, if there's things that need to be done, fund balances are high. Next year is our chance to take advantage of things that need to get done.
Brandon, I have a couple of questions. Number one is that we received, or have we received, the $900,000?
Thank you. I should have mentioned that. No is the answer. We are still waiting for that check. I don't know how they're planning on delivering that to us, whether it's certified mail or snail mail. I don't know. But so far to date, we have not yet received that check.
I'd be willing to go back there and pick it up.
I certainly hope that we would see that soon. All of the necessary paperwork was sent off before Thanksgiving. So I believe it's a matter of time at this point. But to date, we haven't seen it come in.
Okay.
Okay, Madam Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm just curious, since we know property taxes do fluctuate and compression does come back and can impact the library, how do they plan for the future? And is there a way to reserve funds? I mean, I know we have a contingency fund for when or if compression is tighter
Returns.
again.
So we do set aside. We always have we always attempt to set aside 6 months in our ending fund balances each year, so that we can do two things. One, whether against any sudden change in property taxes or in case we don't get cash right away, and also to have a small nest egg in case we need to tap into it in outer fiscal years. The library also sends cash off to an equipment reserve that we could tap into if it became necessary. So we have certainly changed how we plan for our future. We do a 5-year forecast to make sure that we have enough cash sitting out in that 5 years instead of just looking at year over year. We think, staff believes, that we're in a good spot financially and in the form of savings that we can weather some kind of economic downturn. Something like another housing crisis like we saw in 2008 and beyond, that would be harder. That's hard to protect against in any manner. But there are no market indicators of that at this point. And certainly if we did see that on the horizon, we'd have a little time to prepare, and would certainly change the story, I think. But for now, I think we have adequate reserves that we should be fine 5 years out.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Okay, anything else that we need to ask Brandon? Eva, are you okay? Don?
Fine.
All right, so guess we do the new business then, Megan.
So, a new business, the only thing I have that I've been wanting to talk about since I started, basically, is some changes to the library policy manual, just kind of bring it more up to date, and change a few things. My overall thought on this is I want to make the entire process of getting a library card, checking materials out, returning materials, and just being in the library in general more streamlined and easier for both staff and for patrons. And even looking at, new citizens to town, I want to make it easier, a little bit easier for them to be able to get library cards. And then just kind of streamlining a lot of what we have. So that's my overall philosophy, is just streamlining where you can, making things a little bit easier for all sides. It's not just for this, just easier for staff, and not just this is easier for patrons, but for everybody. So I believe the version that printed is with the changes. If you have the marked up version, great. If not, I'm just going to go through kind of the pages and kind of tell you where the changes were.
Okay.
Okay?
Can you put it up on the screen? Because I did look at it online, but I obviously didn't print it out, and I've got my old version and was trying to, reconcile the two.
Yeah, Microsoft Word was being fussy. It's the best way to say it.
It'd just be easier to follow you if I had something to look at.
Whichever version is up, this will work with. Okay. So this is the version that has the changes, it looks like. Table of the first page, just changing people. Charlene's the new chair. I'm the new director. Just adding that information in.
Oh, okay. I'm
And then in the table of contents, there was a couple words misspelled. Just fixed that. For expulsion and freedom were both misspelled.
So Megan, do you want us to wait to make comments or?
Once we actually get to content, then you can just comment at the time. I just didn't think you'd have any objection to spelling changes.
I think the only question we're probably having, and of course, I don't know how we missed the misspellings, but we just did this less than 2 years ago,
Right.
a year ago.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of what's kind of got us wondering. So, but I wish it had, the changes were highlighted so we knew what had been changed. I can send you the raw word file too. Huh?
Give me 1 second and I'll get that.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
It's not on. There you go.
So just introduction, I understand how you changed some of the ordering of items, and that makes sense to me. So.
There you go.
There it is. Yeah. Okay.
Is it good enough?
Yeah. Well, it is for me. Is it you, Don?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the first change is in the mission statement. And any of these changes, if you're like, we don't want to change it as a group, that's fine. This is just my thoughts as the new director, and I think that's one of the reasons why I know it's only been a little bit of time, but that's one reason to do this now is with a new director.
Sure.
Kind of a new philosophy going in. So I just want to change the mission statement slightly to be the Sweet Home Public Library transforms lives by educating, inspiring, and connecting people. The library is dedicated to fostering an informed, engaged, and connected city.
Okay, I noticed on this new one, I know this is nitpicky, I'm sorry. It should have 2 in there. The library is dedicated to, and when it printed out, it left out the 2.
Okay. We can do that.
I know that's picky, I'm sorry. But
No, that's fine.
that's
That's
just
the way
kind
it
of what
should
I
be.
do. Sorry.
If we missed spellings in the table of contents last time, I'm all about this little stuff, so we don't have to change it again.
So I'm wondering, I know that the library serves the city, but in the former mission statement, it used the word community because we do have patrons from the school district from outside the city. And so I'm wondering if I'd like to entertain a consideration for maybe community is a little bit broader than city.
Yeah, the previous just said it's dedicated to advancing literacy and fostering lifelong learning.
Oh.
But I'm fine with city changing to community.
Mm-hmm.
Just for the board's information as we go through this, any changes we make will be up here in blue. The red will be the original changes.
Okay.
Good catch there, Eva.
And then core values, because you're using the third person. Well, you're actually using the first person. I'm wondering about using the third person instead of we. Use,
Yeah, I did. The only thing I changed in the core values was one grammar mistake. But I'm fine with changing the tense or person. That would be fine.
yeah.
That is needs
Yeah,
to be
yeah, you need a space between that is sensitive.
That
Next.
just
There
there's
you
some
go.
there's that's gonna happen a few times just because word formatting was weird.
Yeah, that's what and I'm not going to talk about that because I figure when you go through it, you'll figure out there are a bunch of words that are run together and need a
Once
space.
we actually accept
Right.
the changes
Right, exactly.
in the document, that
Sure.
should
It'll come out.
Otherwise, we're going to be here all night. I'd rather not do that.
That's basically all the same. Then down to the library cards. Some of this is just streamlining it. Change, a city resident, because we have to be a city resident to get a free card. The major change here is the proof of address. I'm just changing it from a home address to current address. And then the utility receipt, rent receipt, all of that, we had asked for 30 days, which I've already seen is a little bit difficult because those bills only come out every 30 days. So it's, 90 days sounded a little bit easier for people to be able to get their bills, especially when the mail is a little bit slower sometimes. It has been this last week. So that's just, I think, a minor change there. And then also accepting the driver's license with your current address on it. So I figure if it's good enough for the DMV, it should be good enough for us.
Yeah.
This part was new for where Brandon just highlighted. This part, I'm fine with this being there or not. But since we had talked about motels designated as apartments qualifying people as residents, I'm wondering if we also would like to add in persons living in city authorized shelters run in part by the city. Would you consider them as qualifying as residents? I'm thinking long term for when we finally get the shelter area in place in the city. Because I do think for those people that are going to be living there, it will be a slightly more permanent place, and having access to the library would be very helpful for them.
You're talking about the homeless shelter, proposed homeless shelter that's going to be built. Yeah, I'm fine with that. That to me is reaching out into the community. So,
do they have, just going back to the acceptable proof of current address, would they have that available to them to provide that proof? Or would a record from that shelter be sufficient? That's my only question.
I believe that they will have some paperwork with FRC. I think they were, so I know they'll have to provide, like they've been in Sweet Home for 90 days before they can be accepted by FRC into, of course, we don't know the final wording of all the living arrangements, but I believe they would have something. Like right now, we work with Sean with the PD, and he will vouch for some people that we do allow a temporary or lower access cards. He will vouch for them and say, yes, they have been here for this long and all of that.
I think that's a great opportunity. It'll help them in any transition that they're going through. So, yeah.
And then I just kind of condensed down the parts of motels, shelters, autos, cars, just to non-permanent housing. Rather than we could just keep listing the different types of things, places people could be sleeping. Just general grammar changes. Nothing too exciting going on here. The card is valid for 1 year line. All cards are only good for 1 year. So it's just kind of putting that in again, that you have for if you own property but don't live in Sweet Home, that the card is only valid for 1 year when all cards are only valid for 1 year. And then the next section is talking about renewing for their kids. It's the same for issuing the card and renewing the card. It's just cleaning that up. The biggest change I think that I'm asking you guys to approve are down to children. Is I would like to change the age that you can first get a library card to the age of 5. I picked this age because that would align with when kids are most likely going to be enrolling in school. Mm-hmm. So if they are in kindergarten, then they will, I would like them to have more access to books than just their school library. The library card renewal is just cleaning up the language a little bit to cover all fines and fees and not break out lost items or overdue items. It's just all fines and fees.
So that's a question about the fines and fees, because we've talked about eliminating those. Perhaps we've eliminated them temporarily. And so there is still language embedded related to that. And I wondered what you're thinking in that regard.
The fees, where it lists fees here, that would be if there's a lost book, there'd still be a fee. The fine would be related to any overdue fines. But if we're not charging fines, this would still allow, if we decide in the future to change back, we could just eliminate where it says fines, but this kind of gives the options just on the fine schedule where it would not have fines listed. That makes sense for finance. But I can go either way on that. We haven't decided to fully go fine-free, so it's just kind of some interim language. But when we look at this again in a couple years, that could be something that's cleaned up then.
I guess my opinion about fines is that, I'm not for them, and I can't imagine that if we did decide not to have them, that 2 years from now we might decide to reinstate them. Anyway, that seems a little mind-boggling to me, but
I'm not certain how quickly we're going to get these changes made, but the fine situation, and I agree with you, I'm fine with not having them, but we set it up so that we were going to give 3 months trial. And so I don't think that's a big issue right now. And I easily taken out, I think, isn't it? Yeah, however you want to handle that, Megan,
okay.
is fine.
Because the 3-month period, I think, is up in January.
February, first part of February.
Yeah, first part of February, yeah. So.
Yeah, so we've never moved that quickly before, so there may be a first time. Yeah. Okay.
Megan, I would like to see
I can see what numbers we can pull. This is mostly what I'm hearing from staff, but I can see if we can pull some statistical numbers. Yeah. Yep, I can work on getting those. The lost, forgotten library card. What was written here before really made no sense because it didn't match the headline. So just a simple line of lost library cards are replaced at the cost per the City of Sweet Home fee schedule, which I believe is $1. And then separating it out, if you've forgotten your card, what ID we will take at the desk to check materials out to you, which just goes in line with the same type of ID that we would accept to get a library card. And then doing away with the discretionary exceptions. So it was kind of combining those two things. It's basically something that has your name pre-printed on it is what we will accept. Nothing's changing with the computer use cards. Nothing is changing with library cards from other libraries or from Oregon Passport cards. Those policies are kind of set by the consortium and by the state library. Circulation policy, just changing some wording, nothing actually changing with the policy. The access to personal information. I am deleting the ability for a friend to use your library card, which I thought was slightly odd. So parents and guardians can use the card. It's just when it said if a friend or family member wishes to access, they must have the library card. I'm just basically taking out the friend part. And then we will not disclose personal information unless we're requested to by the account holder, which makes sense legally. Down to loans, loan periods. Since COVID hit, we have been checking out current issues of adult magazines. Sounds really wrong. Magazines for an adult audience? I don't know. It just sounds wrong either way we do it. Anyway, current issues of magazines prior to COVID could not be checked out. Once they started with Curbside last year, they've been checking out the current issue and there's been no problems. So I'm just eliminating that as a special exception and it won't look like we have adult magazines. So they're just general magazines, I swear. The children's Vox books, we've been experimenting and just letting them check out for 3 weeks. The main reason we had them for a 14-day loan was the battery life on them was not as long, but they've updated their software and all of that, so the battery lasts a lot longer. So they'll just go to the regular 3-week checkout. DVDs are still checking out for a week, just kind of eliminating the must be 18 years of old. It still would be up to the guardian of the card holder to determine if they will check the materials out. So we're just putting that, like same with books, it's in the hands of the parent or guardian if they will allow their under 18-year-old to check out a DVD. Part of this, why DVDs were so separate and so different, is just that they used to cost a lot more. Now they're much cheaper than books. So we don't need a lot of the same restrictions. And then we've already kind of changed this of we're allowing 5 DVDs per card at checkout, not per household. So like if you have a household of 5 people, you were only allowed 5 DVDs for all 5 people, but now each card could check out 5. And we really only have, I think, 3 people that want to go above this limit anyway, but it just kind of removes that little bit of a barrier. Car repair manuals, we have moved all of them that were still in okay shape, we've moved all of them to the general nonfiction collection. So we have no need for them to be in a separate collection, no need to collect a deposit. They hadn't checked out in a number of years anyway. So it's not a big change. We no longer have a reference material checkout section. We've integrated those that were still in, they were still current. We've moved those just to the general nonfiction collection. It used to be that reference materials cost a lot more and were checked out a lot more or used a lot more. That's not the case anymore. So just moving them so they can check out. And if people really do want something, they can check it out. And in the month or two since we made that change, none of them have checked out. Just general grammar changes later on. Under delinquency fines, notices, we've been have the ability to do text messaging for your overdues, for when stuff is overdue. Send a courtesy reminder that something's due within 3 days. That's just something that's been possible for the last 2 or 3 years. So it's just adding that in. Suspension of borrowing privileges section. It used to be if one family member owed fines or fees, nobody in that family could check anything out. So it's just eliminating that. It's still if you have the fines or fees on your card, mostly the fees for lost stuff, you cannot check things out. I don't think that'll be a huge thing, but it's just a little change that make it easier. If a parent has forgotten to return their items, their kid can still check out books. That's the major thing I want to get at. Is just that the kids can still have the books that they're wanting. Referral to a collection agency. I'm not sure how often this is actually going to occur, but just putting in an amount of, at this point, we will turn it over to a collection agency if you owe over $75 on your account for lost materials or whatever. If that's okay. In the computer use policy, I have talked with our IT person about possibly lending out laptops or tablets or something like that. So it's just putting in a line about if we do start doing that, it would be covered by the same policy. And then under collection development, a line that I've seen in a lot of these policies at various other libraries, it's just the library's acquisition of materials does not constitute an endorsement of the material's content. So just because we have it in the library doesn't mean that all of the library staff agree with it. And we do have a very wide variety of library staff.
I think that's really important.
Yeah. Just changing some of the other language. For donations, adding in that we would like it to be new or like new. And not moldy and dog-eaten. Yes. And then criteria, also just adding in how current the information is for the material we're adding.
I imagine that list comes from the ALA or one of those.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just kind of standard practice.
Yeah, right.
And then there is, so when we look at materials that we're going to withdraw or replace, we also, in addition to looking at how many times it's checked out, the condition it's in, also how often it's maybe used within the library. My last library, we had a huge dictionary that you couldn't check it out. It's also like 20 pounds, huge thing. But it was used a lot in the building. little kids especially loved, like, it's so big, biggest book I've ever seen. But, if we had gone just by the policy, then we'd get rid of it because nobody's checked it out. But it was heavily used within the building. The request for reconsideration of materials or additions, basically just adding in that I will respond to a request in writing in a timely fashion. Just adding in a slight time frame for that. Still very general, but it is there. Looking towards a new facility on the horizon for displays of art. I just would like the consideration of acquisition of artwork to be more with the library and not with an outside group. So the library has a little bit more say about what is going to be in the library. And the library also would probably would be part of the city in that de facto part of the city. It just seemed to me a bit odd that an outside group had most of the control over stuff displayed within the library. And I don't know if Oregon still has like a 1% for art when you build a new building. They did when I was here 15 years ago. So there would be artwork added to the building if we did build a new one. Yeah. Bulletin board. Space is not really limited. So I just eliminated that line. But otherwise everything's staying the same. Programming, performer or presenter, because like a juggler is slightly different than somebody coming in from OSU and presenting about a topic. It just covers both. Food and beverages can be at a program or an event. It's just little tiny stuff. No blocking the aisles, which would be between the stacks of books.
So this is a little weird one, Megan. So hang in there with me about the clothing. We can go back to clothing. So we really want people to be fully clothed. And we're just addressing torso and footwear. So I'm wondering if we need some language like fully clothed, or if that's just covered in indecent
It's usually
dress.
covered there, like if you go into Safeway, it says like shirts and shoes required.
Yeah.
There's never, I'm not sure why, but there's never a pants or skirt requirement.
Yeah.
So I think it's covered by exposure.
Yeah. Okay. Just had to ask.
I agree with you that it's odd.
Somebody might make an issue about that. Well, I've got my shirt and my shoes on.
Electronic devices.
Oh,
cellular telephones is a bit weird, so just cell phones.
Can we go to weapons too? So remind me if I know that we are an open carry state. Are we a concealed carry state for guns? Okay. So, okay. I wish, anyway.
Yeah, so that we just have to follow state law. I didn't change anything there. In my last state, parks there was no exception for parks and community buildings, like where libraries fell in, and so we had to allow open carry within the building.
Yeah, I've been in the library when a father came in with 2 little kids and open carry.
Electronic devices, I'm just changing language a little bit, adding additional things. Had some patrons with They might have headphones on, but they're cranked up so you can hear it perfectly fine. So it just gives us the ability to say, hey, can you turn that down? Going down to restriction expulsion, just changing spelling. Unless it's meaning math for expulsion. Brandon, I'll catch up with you eventually. Children left at closing remains the same. At proctoring, just making it a little less wordy of if we're not returning a test by email, then the student will provide a prepaid envelope, and we're not doing faxing. I don't think a lot of places are going to be needing proctoring. This was like a little bit old school way of doing online schooling, and I think a lot of colleges are getting over that. So I don't know if this will be something in the future or not. We'll see what comes out of the pandemic. But I'd seen it going down already before all of that. Volunteers. Volunteers should not have access to, keep going down. Should not have access to the computers and databases where all the patron information is. So taking that out and just saying that they can also assist with programming, which we have one awesome volunteer that helps with our summer reading every year. And every other program we've ever done that I've seen so far. And then I have discretion for other volunteer duties as assigned. I think that is the only changes. The appendices can stay the same. The history hasn't changed. I don't think there's anything. Oh, other than spelling freedom correctly. I don't think there's any changes further on. So any thoughts that we haven't covered? Jamie, in her email that she couldn't be here, said that she was fine with all the changes and good to go. If we want to have continued discussion next month, that's fine. If you're good with it now, I believe after this, it would still have to go through City Council. So Susan would get to hear all of this again. I wouldn't go through line by line, but...
I was just as a comment, I looked up the freedom to view policy that's in the appendix because the date on it was 1989, and there actually is not another newer version.
Yeah, I did the same thing with all of the
that.
appendices.
It's like, what? But
I was slightly surprised by that as well for a lot of these, that there wasn't newer versions. But what is here is the newest statement from ALA for all of the appendices.
I'm just going to tell the city council that we all wanted to keep it freedom and not freedom. Approve of all changes except for that one.
It's actually be free dawn.
I'll second that.
We have a motion to approve the proposed changes in the policy manual, and it has been seconded. And all in favor?
Aye.
And the motion is approved. So, good job.
And I will say I did share all of this with staff, and they were on board as well, obviously.
Good.
Should have said that before, but...
Okay, great. Thanks, Megan.
That is all the new business I had. I will take this to the council meeting probably after the first of the year and then get their approval, and we'll go from there.
Just a question on the fine situation, the word fine. If we choose to take that out in March, once we hit our 3-month mark. We don't have to take it back to the council, do we? Can we just, or,
I think we can just ignore it.
Okay.
I don't know if we would want to fully take it out of the fines and fees schedule, or if we can just, I don't know how often that's reviewed. Looking at Brandon.
maybe just wait till the next
So it's
time?
reviewed in January each year.
Okay.
Oh,
So we will likely have to go back. If you decide to leave it, then we wouldn't need any action and the fines would come back. If you do decide to make changes, then the council would probably review it in one of their February meetings to pull it out of the fee schedule.
Okay.
And we might kick the fee schedule to the first meeting in February just so that we could include that
Yeah.
potentially without having to do this twice.
yeah, I just thought maybe, leave a step alone. It's just, it's kind of silly to have to go back and just change that one
Yeah.
thing. So if you can make it the easiest for the council and for us and you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Is any other business to do?
I don't know if Susan looked like she had a question, maybe.
Oh, Susan. Oh, she's good. Okay. Done.
I would just like to commend the individuals that were responsible for making the minutes up, whoever they happen to be, whether they're staff in the city or whether it's the library staff. But it comes within meeting the requirements of the Oregon Revised Statutes. And I like to see that.
That would be me. Brandon gets me the transcripts from these, and then let's read through it again and make the minutes and try to get them to you guys as quickly as possible.
I like to see it that address.
Well, thank you. It helps to have transcripts, is all I can say.
All right. If there is nothing else, then we will adjourn this meeting at 5:39. No, I'm sorry, 5:34. What is it? 5:29. If I could look at the clock is messing me up. Has to be the clock's fault. Okay, everybody, have a good week.